Okay, we are live. Welcome everybody to the $7 to $100 million podcast. I'm your host, Tim Warren. I've been doing SEO for 14 years, been a serial entrepreneur. I am joined by Danielle Svire, who's our marketing manager, and Paul DeMott, who is our chief technology officer. So good morning, guys.
Good morning.
All right, for those of you who are new to the stream or have not seen the podcast yet, the purpose of this, I'll just say this really quickly. We're on episode 18. We are scaling a business from about 7.5, 8 million to 100 million. And we started the business, multiple years ago. We've grown the thing and scaled it, but now we're trying to get to this next level. And the stuff that we're learning and the things that we're changing, we are running advertising. We are working on our sales funnels and our sales close rates and process. There's operational things that are coming from behind that. But basically this journey of scaling, we were meeting every morning anyway to cover the ads and what's working, what's not working, and process. We're like, why don't we start live streaming this and turn this into a podcast and then make it unedited so it's just the good, the bad, the ugly of actually scaling a business and what are the real things we're seeing and finding and talking through and challenges versus here's a super, edited podcast where, you got the two speakers and they're doing their thing and talking, which is fine. There's a lot of that out there. But I wanted to see the real raw content of what does the day-to-day trenches look like when scaling a business. I was tired of just seeing the we started a company and then we sold for 120 million. Like, what did you do in between? Like, what was that's kind of a big gulf there. Like, what about the day-to-day stuff? When did you meet? How often? How hard did you work? How many hours? What did you do?
I think a lot of times people, it sounds like the company solved three big problems basically, and then they got to 100 million versus the reality is probably more every single day they are problem solving new things that are, very nuanced.
Right. Yeah. And it's for me, it's not that I'm not willing to work hard. I am, but I like to not waste time because time is so valuable. And so if I can learn something, if I'm going to go, we use the digging a swimming pool analogy. If I have to dig a swimming pool and I don't know what I'm doing, right? Well, then it's can I get a backhoe? Well, I don't know how to run a backhoe. Well, then let me watch a video on how to run a backhoe. I could try to figure it out on my own for hours, but I probably will take me much longer to figure out how to run the backhoe than watch the YouTube video someone's made on how to run the backhoe, right? So if we can reduce time and reduce how much work and energy it takes to figure things out, we will just get to the objective faster and we'll be able to spend our energy on the things that matter, right? So it's ambitiously lazy is what I've heard, right? It's you're ambitious, but you are trying to get there with the least amount of work versus just the most amount of work. So today we're going to continue this conversation on profitability. We want to go through. So Paul, looks like you have some research and some data. For those of you who are watching, the problem we're currently trying to solve, we are an interesting business in that we have service component, we have SaaS component. So we have software that we sell, we have softwares that we've built, that we've written, coded, and those are very profitable. We have service, and the service is less profitable. But oftentimes when clients are coming to Helium, they want a done for you. So not a DIY, but they want a DFY, right? Done for you. Done for you is less profitable unless we can charge enough money to really cover our costs. So where we're running into issues is when clients come to Helium and they want the done for you, but they want it at the software price. That obviously is not possible, right? So we're trying to really learn and understand how can we work on the profitability so we can offer better products that are profitable for Helium, works for the client, allows us to have an ad payback period where we, it doesn't take us, many years to get the revenue back. And one of the other things that we're talking through is figuring out, do we need to be charging more upfront fees so we have the dollars to actually run the accounts versus assuming the account's going to go 32 months, which is our average, but they don't all go 32 months. Meaning that if they don't go 32 months and we're assuming those averages and they quit after 8 months, we probably lose money. So we don't want to sell things that are unprofitable. Anyway, so Paul, love to hear what you found so far.
Yeah. So I think a theme of what I found actually that's interesting is that a lot of these intuitions that we have and a lot of the stuff that we talk about have specific names in literature. And so I think it's useful to define things because then we can research and look into it even more. But then also we can kind of know the strengths and cons of each one. So I have so there's a couple key takeaways I was looking at. So one, in terms of where do agencies lose money? I think this is important when building packages, when selling deals. So there's two terms that pop up in the literature that I thought were good. So one is called complexity tax, and the other is snowflake client. So these are that's common enough that it has its own name. But okay, so complexity tax is this idea where you agree to do stuff that is easy to do, but takes your business outside of standardization. So let's say I was like, hey, Tim, can you write up an email to me? But then can you like go research a couple pictures that you include in the email as well? So if all day long you're writing up emails, but now you've got to like interrupt the task to go do something that's easy, you know, there's task switching, but the biggest loss of profitability is essentially the loss of standardization. So that's and this is like kind of the ongoing dilemma that agencies have, is that if you never step out to do an easy task for a client, how can you deliver really good service? The clients will get mad at you, but at the same time, doing these things actually just adds essentially a ton of operational overhead. So so basically, where do agencies make their profit? And so this is like essentially the list that I came up with. So repeatability, standardization, SOPs, like those are all like one bucket. So anything that can be like repeated, follows a strict SOP. Then agencies make their money on automation. So tools like Ascend and Noble, that's where we're profitable. And then delegation to mid-level staff. So if you have a team, like a mid-level team, them doing stuff, as well as predictable delivery hours. So I guess anytime you deviate from that, so anytime leadership has to get involved, anytime the mid-level team can't do it, anytime the task is outside of standardization, that's what eats into profitability essentially.
Okay.
So I think one of the takeaways is like, just because something is easy to do doesn't mean it's good to do, because there's like a tax to doing stuff that's outside of like your standard operating procedure. So then the next question, well, so how do you actually deal with this? Because clients will be unhappy if you never say yes to doing easy things that seem kind of trivial. And so the answer I was reading is you separate should this be done to should we do it ad hoc for free, and an agency needs to be tracking every time they actually step out of scope and do stuff. So it's not that you shouldn't do these things. It's that one, that they need to be charged for, and then two, they need to be tracked because they add up. And so if you're not tracking out of scope stuff, then your team can end up just you can end up just losing your lifetime gross profit. So like for Hormozy, let me see it. There was a Hormozy quote actually that popped up in all this as well. So in Hormozy's terms, you're giving away value without capturing it in price, which means you're increasing cost to deliver while holding revenue flat, compressing lifetime gross profit without it ever showing up as a line item. So I think that was like one of the things I read. It's just sort of the warning to agencies. This is like what kills agencies basically in terms of profitability. So that's number one. Then, all right, so number two, I think this is a really interesting thing. So putting terms to different pricing strategies. So there's actually names for these different strategies. So one is competitor plus value. So you look at what are competitors charging, and then you try to charge less and add value. So that's like actually like a term that's used.
Right.
Then there is cost plus margin. So salaries of the employees plus margin. And then the third option is value-based pricing. So the worst in the market, the companies doing the worst are doing competitor plus value pricing. The companies doing the best are doing value-based. But value-based, only 17% of companies do value-based pricing, where they charge based off of the value that they're driving. Those companies are doing the best, and the reason is because they're not capped by the results that they drive. So if they drive really good results, they make way more money. So that there's way less of a restriction on them. What it says, though, is that most people do not do value-based pricing because you need very good attribution in very clear ways that you're driving value. And you need to be able, and it's a much more difficult sale in the upfront. So even though it's superior, most companies don't have the attribution capabilities or the sales capabilities to switch to it, which is why most people don't do it. Mm-hmm. So then the best alternative to that is essentially, you take the cost of the product to deliver plus margin on top of it, and that becomes your price. So ideally you're doing value-based, but value-based has with it some big limitations, which is why people in the industry don't do it. But the people that can do it are the ones the best off. So I'll stop there because that's a lot of just rapid fire.
Okay, I think so. Let me apply that to what I've been thinking about with our business. So, do you think it's fair to say, Paul, that our clients bucket into 3 different buckets, like small businesses, medium-sized businesses, large businesses? Do you think we have all 3 of those, and they'll kind of bucket into that category?
Yeah, I think that's a fair category. Yeah.
So here's one way I'm thinking about it is, what if we were to do this based on buckets? Because a enterprise client, they're very much not price sensitive. And in fact, the more expensive the thing is, the better, the more seriously they'll take it. Yep. But if we try to take an enterprise price, we try to sell that to a small business, it's not going to work because they just won't have the money. Right. And so it's like you show the Maserati to the person who wants the moped, and they're just not going to buy it because it'll be so far out of the line of what they want to spend. It's just, I don't think it actually anchors them. I think it just repels them. So I don't think that's going to work. I think the tricky part we're running into now is when you get the small business client who wants mid-sized business service or enterprise service, and then we try our best but that's a totally different thing. And so what we should maybe have and define, and so what if we started this way, just a thought, is what if we started the conversation by saying, great, hey, what's your guys' revenue? How many employees, what's your revenue? Where are you guys at? Like Hormozy does, right? And then if they say, oh, we have 10 employees and we're $1 million in revenue. Oh, cool. Okay. You're $100,000 ahead. You have 10 employees. Where are you trying to go? We want to go to 20 employees, $2 million in revenue. Cool. Okay. Awesome. Got it. And then, right. So what if we had that framework and we're like, so let's just do simple math. What if companies should be spending 10 to 20% of their top line revenue on marketing? And that's just realistically how much they're going to be able to spend without raising much money. And most of these businesses will be able to raise money. So that means if they're $1 million in revenue, the most they can spend is $100,000 on marketing, but that's probably even a stretch. And that needs to include all the stuff, the ad fees, the actual working media, the fees. So if they're going to spend $100,000 a year, they're $1 million, they need to spend $8,000 a month, which means the most they can buy is a $4,000 package and $4,000 media. That's the most they could spend, right? Yep. So we shouldn't even show them something more than that because they just aren't going to be able to afford it, right? They just physically can't afford it. So, all right, now there's the thing of but I want to get to 2 million, so I need to spend at that level. Yeah, but can you afford to? Do you have enough money in the bank to actually float that or whatever? So that's one thought. So one thought is we come at it from how big are you? How much should you be spending? Then I can make recommendations and programs. So that's one idea. Second idea is how do we? I was thinking about this. What if we also assumed, even though our average client goes 32 months, that's average when we look at all of our clients, because we have a lot of clients who've been with us for a long time. But I don't think that's the average of cold traffic coming from Facebook.
Yeah, I actually think we'd be better off always looking at a median, what is the middle value, because the average is always going to get stretched by our really long clients, long stay clients. They're multiple years. Right, exactly. So what if instead we said, what if we viewed profit or LTV of clients only in 6-month chunks? So you're coming from Facebook, you've got a $3,000 a month budget, you want to sign up. I need to make sure that I'm getting maximum profit in this first 6 months. Therefore, if there's a lot more work and setup fees at the beginning, we have to charge way more money at the beginning so that I have profit in this 6 months. Then we go to the next 6-month program. Okay, what do we need to do here? Oh, things are dialed in. It's a lot less work. Okay, we can charge less. We'll have
but that we can charge less, but there's less work. So maybe our gross profit margin stays the same.
That could also be why why there's like different pricing tiers for different commitment levels too, because it actually really does impact the profit. Like we could charge less if we know they're going to be around longer.
Right. And what if you get to a client who's like, I really like helium, but I don't want to keep spending $15,000 a month. I want to spend less. And we're like, great. Like, what are you guys looking to accomplish? Oh, this and this and this and this. Okay. Well, hey, what if we stopped meeting and we did everything? We had a daily touch-in email that we blah, 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 and we did this and we used a send and we had all this, but we could reduce the cost and the fees to do the work. We can reduce the cost overall. And they're like, oh, that would be great. So that's what I'm saying. What if we thought about this in terms of like 6-month chunks, and each 6-month chunk was maximally optimized for profit for helium, which also means the price can change for the client, because if we're doing way less work or way less meetings, we can charge less. So they pay less, right? But what if our margin stayed the same? So what if we just optimized for the same profit margin of each program and package, but that can change based on how much work the client needs in that season, right? So that's one way I'm thinking about it.
No, I like that. Yeah. And I like the concept too of showing them pricing that's different based off of what they're willing to commit to. And it's like us explaining why it's different too.
Right.
I think, one of the tricky things, this is kind of like what I was talking about at the very beginning, is that when you sell like a smaller package and the expectations are really high, the operations team has a really tough time keeping that client happy without taking on a lot of the most unprofitable form of work. And so, but it's really hard to be like really diligent in the sale or stringent in the sales process, where you say like, this is the scope. It can't be more than this, and simultaneously sell the deal at the same time. Especially when you're competing against other people. And so the tough part about all of this is like, let's say that we say that we do try to control for margin at different time lengths. It doesn't stop that person from kind of pushing our team for more during that time frame, and us losing that margin very easily. So that would be that's the one question I have, is like, how could we solve for that? And I think one is we definitely need to just be like keeping track of that. Like if we don't measure something, we can't improve it. So like right now it's just kind of a black box of time that our team is spending like across these clients, and we have no idea what's actually happening. But if we are tracking it, we might actually start to see some patterns emerge. And the patterns that emerge might actually give us insight into like what we should automate or what we should outsource. So that's maybe how we can deal with that component of it. But I do agree with I think we definitely need to look at a shorter time scale for deals that we're selling right now and ensure that they're profitable, because I don't think average lifetime length is actually that useful of a metric to us, because it gets skewed high by there's like kind of like two phenomenon happening. So one is that the clients that stay a really long time skew the average up, but then also we're cutting out everyone that churns before 6 months. So all the clients that could skew it downward are getting eliminated from the pool, which is making the average look better.
Right. Well, that and this is back to the sacred cows. The assumption has always been the higher the monthly recurring revenue, the more profitable the agency, the more valuable will be, the higher enterprise value. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if that's true, actually. I think what will make the agency more valuable is more profit. And if we are doing $25,000 of service executable physical work in the first 3 months to get an account set up, but we only charge $9,000 because we have a retainer, and then the client goes 20 months, it'll take 20 or 30 months just to recoup the amount of cash we took just to get the thing started. And then if the client churns at month 30, we never even made money, right?
Yep.
Because we charged wrong.
So one of the, this is
I think what I'm throwing out there is like just length of client does not necessarily mean profit of client, right?
Yeah.
I think billing of client is what's much more related to profit more than length, right?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Actually, so something that I was trying to pull up the specific numbers for this. I just have like a ton of notes. So it's hard for me to find this, but like something that they were showing is that a very consistent pattern in their research is that as agencies grow, their margin shrinks. So their margin is easiest to maintain when let's just say you have a team of 10 people. At that point, you don't need like the overhead, like you don't need managers. You sometimes don't need an office. And so a lot of businesses that they monitored, so a couple trends. So in margin has been shrinking for agencies across their big surveys. So like margin a couple of years ago versus margin today has gotten lower for everybody pretty much.
Right.
And there's been like, I'd say like race to the bottom on pricing that's been happening in the agency world. Now, this always is happening, but like it's just been kind of dramatic in the last couple of years. But then, yeah, what they found is that a lot of businesses really start to lose profit as they grow, and it's very hard to stay profitable as you grow. So there are tons of instances of businesses that are doing twice the amount of revenue and less profit than a company doing half the revenue. So,
is that because they don't need mid-level managers? They don't need as much bureaucracy. They don't need as many layers and levels. Is that why?
Yeah, and just if you think about it, like talented people, like it's when usually the team that starts out and you initially have, that team keeps getting better and they get years of experience under their belt. But as you're scaling, you've got to hire people that don't have the same years of experience. And so like you're kind of hiring on the fringe, and then the quality of your service is harder to sustain as you're like kind of like blowing up your staff. And then people become less efficient. You need more people for less, more people for less or for more work, but they're less efficient. So that was actually an interesting trend. So I think it's more of like a warning flag is like we need to be cautious and make sure that we're set up well. And I do want to say that they said value-based pricing was one of the ways that companies continued to scale is if they made the right profit on the accounts that they should, then that essentially allowed for stuff to continue to grow profitably over time. But again, that's not easy, and it's somewhat of I'd say like value-based pricing is a very different sale and a newer. I think we do like some like hybrid of it, not like pure value-based.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And this is actually, it's really good that we're solving this because I think this is the problem, and you just mentioned it. As businesses scale, they tend to get less and less profitable, like percentage-wise. Maybe overall profit grows just because of size. But this is why it's super important that our product is built as profitably as possible so we can scale, right? And that's, Paul, I think why we need to rethink what exactly are we offering. So I guess let's talk about this for a second.
Can I share one more stat that's really interesting on this? So essentially, our staff size is right in what they call the compression zone, where keeping margin high becomes difficult because it's like as you're around 50 full-time employees, or like contractors, that is where there's all these added costs that, here's the big takeaway. So all these added costs come in: managers, office space, IT, security. So below that, you don't need all of that. So your company doesn't carry around all these extra costs, but you need that around 40 to 50 employees. So we're like in that compression zone. And actually what it said is the way people get out of this is that they have to move upstream to larger clients that they sell. So you have to start selling bigger deals basically to get out of that, to like grow through that.
Yeah, because
sorry,
you just
that was important.
More revenue from them, and then more revenue is going to be more profitable, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
you have to offset the compression.
Let me throw out an idea that I think is at the core of this. So when I met with Sean, I talked to Cole and like the team. The issue with if a client, let's just use the example of client paying $15,000 a month, client paying $3,000 a month, right? The client, if they pay 15, and the service team, the actual cost of the physical team to deliver the work is, let's say, $5,000 a month, then there's margin we can make, right? And you have to pay for office space, and like it's still not net profit, but like there's margin we can make, right? But if a client is paying $3,000 a month and it costs us $4,000 or $5,000 to deliver on that product, we lose money on that client, right? Just like that simple. So ultimately, but if we had a Noble client who was paying $3,000 a month, it's not the amount they're paying. Noble, that would be wildly profitable because Noble is SaaS, right? With way, way higher profit margins. So it's not the price they pay, it's the cost of delivery. That's the real thing, ultimately. And I think sometimes we get hung up on like, well, they have to pay $15,000 a month for us to be profitable. No, if we offer full service humans expert work done in America at human American salaries and all that stuff, then yes, it has to cost $15,000 a month because that's what it's just going to cost, right? But if you want to pay $3,000, you're going to need a totally different solution that does not cost $5,000 a month to deliver, right? And so that was kind of back to my point is what if we explain this to companies, right? So what if we met with them and we explained it and said, look, if you have $15,000 a month to spend on an agency, here's what you're going to get. Here's what you should get. Boom, 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 boom. Account manager, project manager, boom, 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 right? And here's how much stuff costs. If you have $5,000 to spend, here's what you're going to get. If you have $3,000 to spend, here's what you're going to get, right? So, Paul, here was my thinking. Could we rework this to basically say we have all this specialized tech, we have all this specialized knowledge that's super valuable, right? Like think about with our knowledge of SEO and paid ads, think about how many years it would take for someone to get Helium's level of knowledge on paid search and organic search, right? Mm-hmm. It would take 50 years of different, the combined years is like hundreds and hundreds of years of paid search and paid social or paid search and organic search. Mm-hmm. So what if we took all that and we said, what is the most valuable stuff that we know? And how could we productize that most valuable knowledge that we have and then sell that? And then it's based on if 15,000 costs, or if 15,000 a month costs 5,000 to deliver, then $3,000 a month must cost, whatever a third of that is, right? It must cost $1,000 to deliver. That's just what it has to be, right? If that's what it takes to be profitable. And if someone spends $20,000 a month, then it has to cost $7,000 to deliver. So what if we had systems like that where we built the product based on the price that will be spent, and this is the product for that price, and then we sold around that product, right? So take the $3,000 customer, and it's like, hey, you actually don't need tons of meetings. I don't? No. Why would you meet with us? To hold us accountable, to try to make sure we're doing the right things. But if you have to meet with us and hold us accountable, you probably hired the wrong firm, right? Yeah. Do you actually know how link building and SEO is done? No. So if you meet with us, how is that going to push things forward? Versus we're going to spend the money doing the work, building the ads, running the stuff, the dashboard. We're going to talk at this much time to make sure that the things are working. But if we meet more frequently, we have to charge you a lot more money because the time of the team. Mm-hmm. So if you want to pay this amount of money, that's great. But then we have to do it this way so we can be profitable and we can win for you. Or you can pay this amount of money over here. No, I don't want to pay that amount of money over here. Great. Then we should do it this way. And this is what's going to work. So then it's like working backwards from what the product has to be. And then it's how do we sell the product that way and convince people that's the right solution, right? That it's working backwards from what the product will have to be in terms of delivery at that price. Yeah,
then it's like, what's basically for each package, we need to know the delivery costs, and then the marketing. And that essentially every package needs to have delivery costs plus margin plus effectiveness for the person that we're selling it to. So like, how do we solve that kind of optimization problem? So I think I agree with that. Just I think too that the problem today is that we sell I'd say a $5,000 a month product for $3,000. And so really is not like if we think about it, the things that in our scope of work that are different between the $3,000 and $5,000 package, they are, and we've talked about this extensively, but they are the cheapest things for us to deliver.
Right.
So the what is expensive is not correlating to the package. So essentially, we're
selling the smaller businesses. We're selling a slightly cheaper version of the same thing, but the work doesn't really go down, and that's
expensive work doesn't go down. Yeah. And so to your point, what we really need to do is for each of these, like it doesn't mean we can't sell a lower package. It just means that the scope of that lower package needs to be different than the scope of. And I think we need to solve for how do we avoid getting a $3,000 package transformed into a $5,000 package, because usually what happens is all of that stuff could be said in the sales process. Like, hey, you'll get one meeting a month. Like, we're going to do this. Then the moment the person gets upset and we're trying to prevent them from churning and we're trying to drive them results, we start to lean in a ton. And then that becomes a enterprise package.
Right.
And we bring in senior leadership, like the least profitable people come into play.
Right. The most expensive people.
Yeah, that's another way to put it. Easier way to.
I don't know if they're least profitable people. I think they're just the most expensive people.
Yeah, that's probably fair. Yeah, in that circumstance, they're the least profitable. But anyway, so we need to I think really think through the packages and solve for those three things, like true cost of delivery, true margin, and is this going to solve their problem? Because I think today, like all of our packages are not built on the true cost of delivery. They're built on content and number of backlinks.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point.
But then also, how do we stop the deal from transpiring into the bigger package? Because that it just takes someone a little bit frustrated before that happens. And so I think too that's where we need to measure. We actually need to be measuring our lean-ins so we understand where they're happening and why they're happening. And there could be I like the idea of a latent product. I don't know if you've heard this before, but
no.
So Facebook, for example, I was obviously built as a social network, and over the years, there started to be all these groups that would be built on Facebook where people were selling stuff to each other. And Facebook took notice that the majority of the groups that were being created were actually just for people to sell stuff to each other. And so they came up with the idea, let's build Facebook Marketplace. And then Facebook Marketplace became this huge marketplace, arguably bigger than Craigslist, the biggest one for people to sell stuff between each other. So it was the product kind of emerged from what people were doing. I kind of think the same thing could happen from if we're tracking better when we are leaning in, it might actually tell us where we need automation or offshoring or some solution to deal with that more profitably, instead of just saying hey, we're not going to do this stuff. That stuff keeps emerging because there's there's market demand for it. The people want it. So instead of dealing with it by just saying no and making them mad, maybe then it becomes more obvious what's the product there that we need to solve for that. And maybe we can figure it out without tracking too. I don't know. So I think we have to figure that out. But then it's how? Yeah, I think the other piece that we haven't really figured out is how do we just stop it from turning into a bigger deal? And one other thing I did research. So a scenario that we are in today is that we have a ton of leads coming in, and with a ton of leads, there's also a lot of smaller leads coming in. So those cost us time from the real cost of those is that the sales reps have to meet with them. It costs them time. It costs them energy, costs them focus.
Mm-hmm.
But if we never sell any of those, like our CAC is just going up as a result of them, because all those hours that the sales reps are putting there are just like adding up to the cost of the actual clients we end up acquiring. So it's nice to be able to like actually sell those. And so something that did come up is like how important it is to have high margin products that you can sell those, which, you know, today, like we kind of have Noble, but like, is Noble really working as that right now? It's maybe too self-service. It's not enough. So what they said about this, which I thought was interesting, I think we've kind of orbited around this idea, is that, you need to put you need to treat those sales as offsetting the cost of customer acquisition, not as your core business. And so you need to bucket them separately to prevent them from becoming like toxic to the rest of your business. That is really just offsetting your cost of customer acquisition and payback period on your ads. So, you know, maybe that's also something we need to think through as well, of like what solves for that. Does that all make sense? There's a lot there, but
it does. I have some ideas. We'll have to share them on future episodes, but I have some ideas on how we could work through this. But I think our key takeaways for today are, number one, if we are charging less, the product has to cost less. And it has to be differentiated based on, if you're spending $3, it can't cost $5 to deliver, right? Because we'll lose money.
And we have to have measures in place to stop it from becoming $5, because the scope itself that is sold, it has little power over what happens to the deal once it's worked on. Yeah.
And it really comes down to just access to the team and service hours and how much gets leaned in and things like that, right?
Yep.
So I think what it probably has to look like, Paul, is the 3 has to look very different than 5 and 10 and 15. They just have to look very different. And we have to let people know up front that this is not that, and this cannot become that. If you ask us to lean in for that, we will do this, but we will bill you at this level.
Yeah.
Right?
I think we have to be okay with people saying no and walking away too. And we have to like treat churn in that bucket totally differently, because it's, when we say yes to prevent churn, it's actually just like killing profit on the deal entirely. So it's like, yes, I will prevent you from churning and lose money on it. That is what we're agreeing to. Right.
So I think in that case too, it needs to be a little bit more like an attorney, where if you ask your attorney to do something, right, they don't quote you ahead of time. They just say, sure, they do it. And then you get a bill after. And you're like, what's this $5,000 bill from? Well, you asked me to do this thing, right? I think that's another way where, even if there's churn, at least we get comped for the dollars, right? Yeah. That we spent on the thing, which is how attorneys do it, right? All right, cool. That sounds good. I think, Paul, let's talk offline about some of these like real nuances with the products. I think we're gonna have to go really deep there, which I don't know that the listeners are gonna care to hear, but let's go really deep with some of that, because I think there's some interesting ideas that we could really dig into there. But I think what I'm realizing is, let's say we have a 3 level, we have a 6 level, and we have a 10 level, right? Or 10 plus. I think what we need to make it where it's like 3 is very different than 6 is very different than 10. And we explained up front what it is and why it is and how it works that way, right? And how costs have gone up and how much stuff costs in today's world and whatever. And this is how we have these, and we basically say, how big is your revenue? How big is your company? Right? Oh, if you're less than 2 million, you need the 3. Don't buy the 6. It's too expensive. It's not going to be good for you. Right? Then, oh, your mid-sized business, you need the 6 or the 10 or the 15. Right? Oh, your enterprise, you need the 15 or the 20 or the 30. Right? Mm-hmm. And so it's just, it's sold properly based on the business or based on
one thing I'll interject too really quick is that one very common takeaway from the research is that people buy the middle. So like usually your middle package is like what people buy. So I think too, like that's important. Like when we build these, that we may actually shift people up to the middle if we do a good job of showing the differences between the 3 and the 5 or whichever one is 5, 3 and 7.
Yeah. All right, guys, that sounds great. Let's end it there. We'll see you guys on the next episode. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.